Hello. So I believe this is probably the most self-centered, self-absorbed video that I've made. But it might be interesting for somebody to see how people, who are interested in astrology, how they would interpret their own chart. And obviously, I know my own life, I know my own story. Even though there's certain things that are difficult to see yourself about your own life, it's still you're still familiar with yourself, obviously, and so it might be interesting to be able to kind of listen to somebody connecting the dots on their own birth chart, and because I know my own life, and so I can kind of talk about how certain aspects and positions show up in me, because I'm aware of I've had a lot of time to think about how the different aspects show up in me personally. So it might be interesting for somebody. And I did a little poll recently asking people if they would be more interested in me reading my own birth chart, if I can manage it. I mean, I hope I can do okay. But and then the other option was me breaking down one aspect that I have in depth, and that's something that I might still do as well. Me reading my own birth chart was the one that won. I mean, there were only 3 votes, but I'm not surprised that won. But I might still kind of break down some of the aspects that I have at some point in a separate video as well. Like take one of the aspects that I have and discuss how that aspect has shown up in me and kind of the different levels of it. But in this video, I will be attempting to read my own birth chart and talk about some ways in which these positions have shown up in me. As somebody who has, learned about astrology, and I like looking at other people's charts and kind of seeing the connections, but with your own chart it is different because you know yourself, and you can kind of tell maybe easier once you know the symbolism. It's maybe easier to tell how the positions show up in you because you know your own life. But I mean, I could go on and on about that, because like I say, there are some things that are mysteries to even me when it comes to my life, and I know that there's like an underlying reason for these things, and I'm maybe not always perceptive enough to be able to really dig right down to the core of like all of my psychological tendencies. But I mean, I'm getting closer, and it's not like I have to do that continuously all the time, and like I don't have to know everything about myself or how things show up in me. But I mean, the birth chart is a good way of kind of tapping into some of these energies and like how things work for me, and like what's underlying these things. And it's a bit of astrology can give me a bit of comfort as well, in that I know that there's a reason for things, and there's underlying meanings for things, and there's patterns in things, that we're all part of a pattern. But I've been going on about this for now, like 3 minutes now, so let's attempt this. So I will say, I don't know if it's that I'm a very doubtful person in general, but I do doubt the accuracy of my birth time, and that's something that I've talked to some people about. It's because the time that I was given, it was the official time that I was given from the hospital, and it's also what my mother had written in her notebook when I was born. So it's 6:45 a.m. on the 1st of April 1991. But I just think, if you shift that time a few minutes left or right, it'll it can give me sun. Like here you can see I have sun in the 1st house, but if you shift it a little bit, it'll be in the 12th house, which in some ways seems to fit my personality better. Then if you shift it the other way, you can also give me Pisces rising, not Aries rising. But there's nuances, and there's other things that can lead to me feeling more like Pisces, or me feeling more like I have sun in the 12th house or something like that. There's different things that come into play. So, I do have sun in Aries. I have Aries rising with this time. Let's just say that this is the correct time. I know I have sun in Aries, Aries rising. But there's certain things like the Sun square Neptune, for example, the Ascendant square Neptune, that makes me feel more like, maybe that is one of the reasons that I do feel more like I would have Sun in the 12th house, or like something in Pisces or something. So that is why I doubt my birth time sometimes. I think that it might be just a few minutes off, just because of, sometimes they generalize the time in the hospital. They round it up. So that's kind of the thing that I doubt sometimes, is that maybe I'm actually Pisces rising, or maybe I actually have Sun in the 12th house. But there's other things, like I say, that come into place. So the squares to Neptune might make me feel like that. And also, with this chart, I would have my progressed Sun in the 12th house right now, in Taurus. So maybe that is why I feel like over time I've become much more withdrawn, and I've become much more into like spiritual matters, like much more so than I was previously, although I've always had it in me. I just think as a child I was much more energetic, much more Aries in that way, very enthusiastic, very much kind of a go-getter in some ways. I had a lot of ideas. I would kind of irritate people because I would always want to talk. I have Mars and Gemini. I always wanted to talk, and just I was quite out there. I have Sun square Uranus as well, so I was pretty out there. But I think over time it is kind of I've become much more withdrawn. And so maybe the explanation for that is that I have Sun in the progressed Sun in the 12th house now. So maybe I was born with the Sun in the first house and Mercury and Venus, with this Placidus system that I'm using, Sun, Mercury and Venus in the first house. So very self-directed, very self-focused, kind of wanting to put myself out there. But like I say, it became much more subdued and withdrawn as I got older. So maybe the explanation for that is the progressed chart and having the progressed Sun in the 12th house now. But I do have certain Aries qualities still. Like I'm very much somebody who I tend to kind of, it's also the Sun square Uranus, Aries Sun square Uranus. Like I tend to kind of stand apart a little bit. I don't always feel comfortable with that, but I tend to kind of think in my own way. I tend to do things my own way. I don't know how to follow the crowd to save my life. I've tried. It's just, it doesn't seem worth it to me. It doesn't work properly. There's always something that's off when I try to do that, let's say. I don't know if I even have strongly tried to do that, but like definitely I don't try to like these days, I don't really try to kind of follow certain, trends or habits that other people are doing. For better or worse, in some ways it's good because it means that I'm pretty independent in my thinking and in the way that I do things. I have Mercury in Aries as well, and Sun in Aries, Aries rising with this chart. So there is that Aries sort of pioneering, independent spirit. I can definitely also have moments also with the Scorpio moon as well, where I have a lot of emotional intensity. I have a lot of emotional, I don't want to say issues, but like I will kind of, I will have times every once in a while where I kind of, something kind of almost takes over my body and I become kind of, I can kind of explode in a way. And that is something that people may not always realize about me. Also, the Venus in Taurus is very calm and very sort of warm, and that's definitely a side of me. I love food, I love good music, I love, art and going to art galleries, and I love nature. So it seems like I'm always this kind of calm, peaceful person. But with the Aries Sun, rising Mercury, and the Scorpio moon, I can definitely, and there's other things, I can definitely be much more emotionally volatile at times, or after a while, let's say, I can become emotionally volatile in a way that maybe people don't always expect. But it's not certainly like violence or anything like that, but it's more like, I think the Scorpio moon always has something that they're dealing with emotionally, because like I've tried to discuss this so many times, and it's hard to pin it down. I don't feel like I'm a good enough communicator to express what I actually experience in myself. People tend to kind of say that they don't get a good picture of who I am. And that might be also because of the Neptune squares, Neptune square ascendant, Neptune square sun. So it's like something is behind a veil. It's difficult for people to kind of get a good idea of like who I am, despite having the first house planets as well. But it's definitely the case that like there's always more going on than what people assume, I would say. The sun is also in a weak trine to Jupiter. I personally like that. I think that's maybe a signifier of me being interested in learning, and it's kind of a weak trine, but I'm definitely interested in learning and expanding my mind. I'm very open-minded in the learning sense. I like learning about different cultures, and kind of I like talking to people from different countries and just expanding my mind in that way, and even just interested in astrology and like things like that. It's a way for me to find meaning, Jupiter, and also to open my mind, also Jupiter. So there's that. I also have, if we're talking about the sun, I also have the sextile to Saturn, it's a 5-degree orb. I think this aspect is quite weak in me, the sun sextile Saturn, because, it should give a sort of self-control, or kind of a meticulous... Well, actually, I do have it a little bit, like this meticulous way of doing things. Like, I'm pretty... See, my chart is pretty all over the place. If you see, there's a lot going on. It's very scattered. It's all over the place. And that is kind of how I experience myself and how I experience the world and my life in general. But there's glimmers of hope in this sun sextile Saturn, that maybe I can do things kind of methodically, and once I set my mind to something, I can go into the nitty-gritty and the details and get things done in that way. But if you look at my chart, I mean, most of the time I experience myself as being extremely sort of like pulled in different directions. Like I have Mercury square Jupiter and Saturn, not by signs, but because see, Mercury's at the end of Aries, so it's kind of a weaker square to Jupiter there, and a weaker square to Saturn. Like if Mercury was in Taurus, in the beginning of Taurus, then that would be a fixed square to Jupiter and Saturn. But because Mercury is in a cardinal sign, it kind of creates a different flavor. But like it's kind of you're pulled in different directions. So Mercury squared both Jupiter and Saturn. Moon in Scorpio square both Jupiter and Saturn. So it's this kind of being pulled. It's very difficult for me, despite being an Aries, Sun and Mercury. It's difficult for me to be really decisive about things, because there's something in my psychology that doesn't want to settle. So it's kind of like I will see the other side of a situation right away. So if I decide, okay, I'm going to do this, then something in my psyche, like my moon, like my emotions or my head, so Moon and Mercury, something gets pulled the other way. So Jupiter and Saturn in some ways are almost they're almost like opposites. I like to think of them as. So Jupiter likes to expand. Saturn almost wants to contract and like put restrictions on things, and like put structure on things, and put like limitations on things. You can't just go as far as the wind takes you, whereas Jupiter does want to go as far as it can go. So there is this constant erratic energy in my ways of perceiving and my ways of reacting to the world, because these squares are like almost they're not getting along with each other, and there's constant push-pull, right? Jupiter is opposite Saturn. Both of them are square, both Mercury and the Moon. So, I mean, I was such a moody child as well. So I think that is also part of the expression of this, is that, back then, also with the Scorpio Moon, like I was very moody. And so I think it's because I was not mature enough yet to be able to work on these squares. Like it was just a raw expression of having these contradictory squares, Moon opposite Mercury as well. So just constant emotional upheaval, or just constant, like I would go from one decision to the next. I would run around this way, then I would run around that way, if that makes sense. Like, I'm being pretty abstract, but like my experience psychologically of myself, I would say, as a child, was that I was just constantly pulled in different directions. And it's kind of reflected in my chart. And back then, as a child, you're not really thinking about yourself in such a self-reflective way. So it was hard to actually control it, and it's hard to like watch it. So you're just the raw expression of your chart almost. And like, as an Aries as well, with the Scorpio moon, like it was pretty, I was just full of energy, and I didn't always have good outlets for it. And so sometimes it would express itself in me like lashing out at somebody, or not physically but just verbally. Mars and Gemini, at the end of the third house. So I would just kind of the energy is just so huge and immense, and you're being pulled in different directions. You have different interests that don't have anything to do with each other, and you're just being pulled everywhere. And so after a while, you just kind of crash, and you can just kind of lash out. So yeah, I mean, my mom pretty much had her hands full with me as a child, because I was so out there. It's maybe hard for some people to like understand now, because I've become much calmer now, but it was definitely part of my psychology. Maybe it's just something that has been tamed a little bit as I've gotten older. So, I have a lot of squares with Mercury, and that is something that has kind of opened up in my consciousness lately, is that I do have trouble communicating and expressing myself, because I don't necessarily always, well, there's a few different reasons. So, like, Mercury square both Jupiter and Saturn. So, I've kind of already talked about that. It's like 1 minute I'll be optimistic, and I'll also with the Aries, like I would start projects optimistically, then forget about it, then lose my enthusiasm completely. Mercury, Saturn, also Aries and Mars and Gemini as well. Both of those positions, Aries positions and Mars and Gemini, they don't like to finish things necessarily, or they're not good at like following through, although they can. But like, it's just harder because you're just more of an idea person. You have all these ideas that you just want to do enthusiastically. Once the enthusiasm burns out, you kind of just lose interest, and it's like you just can't necessarily, unless you've really worked hard on yourself. With these positions, it can be really difficult to just follow through once you've lost that interest, or once things aren't interesting anymore. My Mercury is also sextile Mars. Once I get going, I can be quite clever in my let's say more intellectual activities, or I can be quite argumentative. I can be quite sharp in seeing. Like Mercury sextile Mars, I think it's a good opportunity in that way to like be able to see connections between things, and to be able to express yourself intuitively and enthusiastically. That's definitely something that I've kind of had to use in my life. It's a positive quality. And then my Mercury square the nodes. I don't really know what to make of that, really. There's probably some, maybe that I'm holding myself back to go, like North Node, let's say, tells me where my soul, let's say, wants to go in this lifetime, and Mercury square that, so it's square the nodes. So it may be my head and my thinking is what keeps me stuck in moving forward, because I'm allowing my own intellectual reasoning to get in the way of just flowing with life and going where like my soul, let's say, wants to go. And then Mercury is also square Chiron, right? Although it's quite a weak square. I mean, my Mercury is at 28 degrees of Aries, my Chiron is at 21 Cancer, but I definitely have a wound related to my communication. Sometimes I will think, wow, I actually speak quite well, and I know how to get my ideas across. But then other times I'm kind of like, I'm shy to kind of express my opinion. I think that I said something really awkwardly. Maybe I talked too slow. I said something kind of awkwardly, or just people don't understand what I'm trying to say. And it's like I'm trying to get all these ideas and all these thoughts out, but there's something kind of it doesn't flow. It's just, look at all these squares with Mercury. It's hard for me to get my communication to flow. Yes, I have the sextile to Mars, Mercury sextile Mars, but then my Mercury is opposite the Moon, not by science but by degrees, and then it's square Jupiter and Saturn and square the nodes and square Chiron. So this, you can tell that like somebody with this many squares from Mercury, like they will have something in them that is like the communication is somehow blocked. It's not coming out flowingly. So with my Jupiter and Saturn squares with Mercury as well, it's kind of like sometimes I talk very fast and enthusiastically, and other times I'm kind of like low energy and I'm trying to like get ideas across, but I do it kind of slowly because I haven't yet been able to really accumulate or like put together my thoughts in a way that they would come out flowingly. But I'm still trying to express, but it's just hard to do, maybe because I haven't been able to think about it as much. Like if I have time to think and prepare, maybe that's something that would help me kind of talk in a way that is more flowing. But also I like to improvise, so it's kind of like very contradictory. I think my chart is very sort of all over the place and contradictory, honestly. Venus, I have a couple of nice trines, if I say so myself, that I personally enjoy from Venus to Uranus and Neptune. So my Venus is at 15 Taurus, Uranus is at 13 Capricorn, Neptune is at 16 Capricorn. I was born during the Uranus-Neptune conjunction, although it's 3 degrees apart. But I think Venus, trying these planets, Uranus and Neptune, it does give me a little bit of that social charm, in that I'm not very social in general, but once I'm talking to people, I can actually surprise myself sometimes how I can be sort of charming, or I can be, I can come up with things to say in a social situation that normally when I go away from social situations, I'm thinking like, oh, I'm so bad at socializing and I'm not good at communicating and blah, 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 blah. But then once I'm actually in social situations, I think it can be surprising for me that I can actually turn on my, social charms, and I can actually enjoy talking to people and socializing with people. It's just that I don't always believe in myself in that way. I don't always believe that I'm good at socializing, because I've had so many sort of awkward experiences. But then I've also had experiences that are very positive in social situations, and people can find me charming or interesting. So I need to kind of give myself more credit when it comes to that. So I know that I can be a social butterfly in some sense, but it's just something that I need to like harness more, just use more. It's kind of difficult for me to describe, but I would say that. Also, the Venus trine Neptune aspect is one that is very close to my heart, because I don't know if people realize how much I love music, for example, how much I love sort of immersing myself in other abstract worlds. I love going to art galleries. I love going to dance performances that are very immersive, like just like these kind of very artistic dance performances. Whenever I can go see them, I go see them. I love going to the like art festivals, and I love just music, and just getting lost in the beauty of the sound of the music, and like nature, and like it's a pretty romantic aspect in that way. Like I would say my Venus trine Neptune is something that, when I see that in a chart, I would think, okay, well, this person probably has a sense of like grace and elegance and beauty, and like they can tap into these things. They can tap into just the beauty of nature and art and music. A lot of musicians probably have like some Venus Neptune stuff going on. Like their soul is basically like it's just connecting to that beauty and music and art in a way that it shows in like their expression. Like they can be quite graceful, and like people can see like, wow, that is a person that is tapped into some kind of universal like higher like beauty, and like wants harmony, and like wants to get along with people, and just wants to have like this wonderful expressions of love. And sometimes that can be beautiful, especially with something like the trine. But there are also times where, it gives me maybe too much idealism. Like, I want relationships to always, and friendships to always be like harmonious. I don't like to fight. I don't like any like harshness or crudeness. I just, at least this part of me is like that. It's like, I don't want to see anyone like struggle. I don't want to like hear people yelling. Like, it's that kind of soft expression, I would say, Venus trine Neptune. I don't have that much going on with Pluto, interestingly, but I do have the moon in Scorpio, so that adds that its own intensity. But I do have Venus opposite Pluto. It's not super strong in terms of like the degrees, but like it's something that I've become more aware of in myself over the past few years. Is that I have Venus at 15 Taurus, Pluto at 19 Scorpio, and I would say most of my friendships, like relationships, with people have been very, like, not with everybody, but with a lot of people. There's been a lot of sort of just weird situations, like kind of. With some people, I've experienced sort of, that I've been sort of manipulated, or there's been sort of, like, there must be something in my energy. Also with the moon in Scorpio, there might be something in my energy that draws certain people to me, that where the friendship can have a level of control attached to it. So, or the relationship or whatever. Like, so. I don't know where this comes from. It's something that I have to explore more. If I kind of study Pluto Venus aspects more, maybe it will make more sense to me on like a psychological level. But the way that I experience Venus opposite Pluto is that, like, I tend to have very intense friendships or very intense interactions with people sometimes that kind of I don't know, they make me almost worried about having relationships sometimes, or having friendships sometimes, because it's like I don't want to go through that again. And it's not anything like super awful, but there always tends to be that, like, I've seen a lot of conflict in my life, not just with me, but like with other people in my life. I've been around a lot of conflict. I've been around people sort of manipulating each other, or me being manipulated, or maybe me trying to change somebody as well. So it's something that I have to be aware of, is that, oppositions often have to do with what other people show us about ourselves. So if I feel like somebody's trying to change me, maybe on some level I've been trying to like change them in some way. So it's complicated. I do also have this is also talking about like friendships and relationships. I do have a nice sextile from Venus to Chiron. It's a bit of a weak one in terms of degrees again, but I think that's a nice harmonious sextile, because it shows that like my friendships, my relationships with people, my interactions with people can actually help me heal, and can help me maybe heal the other person. I've had some people be quite affected by me in like a positive way, and also in a negative way. Like, I especially remember like somebody said that like I've had a big impact on them. And so there is that like Venus Chiron thing about like, okay, well, the sextile gives an opportunity to grow and to heal through your relating, through your interactions, through your friendships, through your relationships. Like, there's a definite signature there of that like I have the potential to grow and heal through just being in a friendship, or being in a certain relationships, or something like that. There's so much more that I could talk about. It's kind of hard to kind of cover everything. So Chiron in Cancer, I was born, during Chiron in Cancer. Everybody with Chiron in Cancer, they have some kind of, well, it can express itself in different ways, but certainly a lot of people with Chiron in Cancer would have sort of issues with their roots, or their their parents or their family dynamics. Like certainly I don't want to go through everything here about my family, but there's definitely been certain wounds to do with the family and moving and just parents, and I'm very sensitive, and like when I think about my family, there's been a lot of sort of things that have hurt me in terms of family dynamics. Jupiter in Leo, I can be quite gregarious in a certain way, and I think that's something that I have to harness more. Is that once I actually allow myself to be, the performer, or be the kind of put myself out there, that's when I can actually expand, and that's when I can actually grow. Our Jupiter sign often shows us ways in which we can actually expand our lives and our minds. So if it's in Leo, I have to put my own self-expression and my own creativity out there, and then I will notice, and I have actually noticed this, is like once I've put myself out there in some way, in like a specific way, and express myself, then things kind of open up and expand in my life. What else? So I don't have a huge amount going on with Mars. I do have Mars in Gemini, which I think is a huge player in my chart, because Mars in Gemini, 29 degrees. I'm pretty intellectual. I'm always thinking about something. I like to do different things. It's been a challenge to kind of do one thing at a time and not kind of dabble too much. I can be quite impulsive in my thinking at times, or in my interactions at times. Also Mercury in Aries. There's that. So Uranus in the 10th house and Neptune in I think this chart actually says Neptune is right in the beginning of the 11th house, but I would actually put my Neptune in the 10th house as well, because Neptune in the 10th house, extreme kind of, I have an extreme kind of confusion, let's say, about thinking about myself in terms of like the larger picture. Like I don't understand where I fit in the larger picture. It's always been hard for me to know what I want to do with my life, really. Whenever people ask me at school, what do you want to do after school, I always just kind of said I don't know, or I'm still thinking about it or something. And that is something that's been part of a larger pattern in my life. Also Uranus in the 10th house, people certainly have seen me as somewhat odd, somewhat eccentric. Saturn in the 11th house in Aquarius, during my Saturn return, I became much more aware of the collective and how, what I'm interested in with regards to the collective. I was thinking a lot about COVID. I was thinking a lot about, what's going on in the news, much more than usual. So I was my head was becoming more connected to the collective. I was becoming more interested in what's actually happening with people in society. But, Saturn in the 11th house, one of the issues for me, one of the biggest sort of issues and lessons that I'm still learning, has to do with just socializing and seeing myself as part of the people around me, or the groups around me. It's hard for me. I think Saturn in the 11th house and Saturn in Aquarius can be somebody who likes to observe the collective and observe people and learn about people. I do astrology, and I do psychology. I'm interested in psychology, so it's I'm more so observing the world and people rather than really always actively participating in it, to a certain degree at least, because I think when Saturn's in Aquarius or the 11th house, you can feel like an outsider. You can feel like there's something about you that's there's something about me that's you feel that it doesn't quite fit, because especially with Aries stuff as well, I'm pretty I can be Mercury in Aries, I'm very self-directed in a certain way, and I'm very independent in my own thinking, and I just want to do my own thing. But you have to think of yourself as also part of something else. So it's not just that I'm here and I'm doing my own thing. I am part of the larger picture. And so I think with my Saturn return, I also became more aware of that. I became aware of like that I am actually part of the bigger collective of patterns and people, walking around the planet. I'm part of something. But I think Aquarius in general is a sign that, it wants to be like independent and individualistic, but it also has a connection to the collective, and like it sees itself as like an observer of the bigger picture, but it's also very connected to the collective. So I think having Saturn in the 11th house in Aquarius, it's kind of, one of the ways it expressed itself in me at school, for example, was that I was kind of a loner until I made one good friend at school, and then I started hanging out with him a lot. But I was kind of a loner. I was I couldn't see myself fitting in anywhere. So I think that is kind of a Saturn in Aquarius and Saturn in the 11th house sort of theme. And the North Node in Capricorn, South Node in Cancer, my South Node is conjunct Chiron. That can be quite retentive. I have the IC South Node and Chiron in Cancer. So all those have to do with the past or roots in some ways. So I can be kind of retentive and kind of going into my own shell, rather than kind of allowing myself to kind of go that path of the North Node in Capricorn, where I am actually being called to go and like make something of myself in the real world. And that is one of the biggest challenges for me, because it's so easy for me to just kind of, sit at home, or just to do my own thing kind of in my, like at home, like my own, like things that I kind of do in my own shell, like listen to my documentary, or watch my documentaries, or listen to my podcasts, or listen to music, or talk to people that I'm close to, rather than kind of experimenting and going out into the world, and trying to tap into that Capricorn North Node, where I'm actually going out into the world and making a career, or making structured steps to like get somewhere. Like that is something that's been a theme in my life, that it's so much easier for me to kind of retreat back into those Cancer like tendencies, that it's hard to think of myself, again with the Saturn in Aquarius as well, it's hard for me to think of myself as like part of like the larger picture, that I can actually go out into the world and make something of myself in the world, not just kind of retreat into my own like habitual patterns of the Cancer. So just kind of minding my own business at home kind of thing. Like I can actually go out into the world and put myself out there, and that's been difficult for me. There's probably there's definitely other things that I could say. I mean, one thing that I find intriguing about my chart that I haven't thought about a huge amount, I do have Pluto trine Chiron as well. So again, there's some kind of healing that can come from just thinking deeply, or immersing myself in psychology, immersing myself in the darker, deeper stuff of life. So Pluto is that. And it's in a flowing relationship with my healing nature, which is Chiron, the wound. Pluto trine Chiron. I can heal, I can flow with the healing when I think about deeper things, or when I go into the depths, which is Pluto. When I suss out the garbage of my own psychology or other people's psychology, I can heal through that, right? There's also that Venus sextile Chiron, which also can mean healing through, relating to people and all that. I also have Uranus and Neptune opposite Chiron. I don't really know what to make of that, but it's there in my psychology. So I hope I covered some of the more... I probably did cover some of the more interesting aspects of this. Like I do have this Aryan nature that is, being somewhat softened maybe by the Venus in Taurus. I love just quiet environments and just, meditating and listening to music and art and music and being in nature. And so that's like the Venus in Taurus part of me. And also the Venus is trine Neptune. And, I don't want to repeat myself, so I think I'm just going to leave it at that. I hope this was interesting for somebody. If you have any observations about my chart or anything that I said, do leave a comment and leave a like if you like this, and subscribe if you want more thoughts from me, more observations, perhaps about astrology or some other things. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for listening.